Moving on with our educational project here on fairbinaryoptions.com, and we started to discuss about how to trade EURGBP pound, tips and tricks, and of course we listed the first two things to consider when trading this EURGBP pound cross. The fact that it is a cross and it doesn't have the US dollar, which is a funding world's reserves currency, it should be noted. And second of all, it moves based on the economic differences between the European and the Eurozone and British economies, and of course it is moving based on the different monetary policies of these two different central banks, the European Central Bank on one hand and Bank of England on the other hand. And we discussed about when these are meeting and so on and so forth. How do we know what other economic events to look for when trading this cross? Well, so economic events will be the third thing that moves the EURGBP pound. Well, out of both the Eurozone and the British economy, we should look for the PMIs, or the Purchasing Manager Index. We should look for the retail sales. We should look for jobs data or unemployment rate. And more important, the CPI or inflation, as this is what sets the pace of interest rates. Higher inflation brings as a consequence higher interest rates. Lower inflation, or the lack of inflation, brings as a consequence again lower interest rates. So unemployment rate, CPI, and high inflation, higher rates, lower inflation, lower rates, and this is what moves markets in general. Not only the EURGBP pound, GDP or gross domestic product, or the total value of goods and services that are being in an economy. All these economic events and much more can be found at the economic calendar, at one economic calendar. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't really need to be the Forex Factory. This is forexfactory.com, but there are a lot of, if you just go and Google for the economic calendar for the currency markets, and then you will find all these economic releases. Normally, you go and look at the currency. So this is the date on the economic calendar. We have the time, and then the currency pair. And if you are trading the euro and GBP pound, then you look at the euro and GBP pound related news. It doesn't make any sense to look at the Japanese yen, the final GDP, as the euro GBP pound is not going to move drastically when the GDP in Japan is going to be announced. But when Eurogroup meeting is on schedule out of Europe, or when German trade balance is being announced, or when retail sales monitor in UK, or when the governor of Bank of England, Carney, is speaking, or when, I don't know, out of Europe, ECB President Draghi speaks, and so on. All these events are made or have the purpose of influencing a currency pair, and of course, EURGBP pound is no different. In terms of binary options, look for ranges in the Asian session, because of course, because it is moving based on European and UK news, then on the London session this pair is more active than on the Asian session. So look for ranges in the Asian session. So one touch or even boundary options are recommended for ranges. Whenever you have ranges in the Asian session, then you can use oscillator, use overbought and oversold levels in oscillators like RSI or CCI. We have a lot of projects here on Binary Options Academy, so just go and take a look how to use overbought and oversold levels. So RSI, CCI, and ETQ. And also try to use bigger expiration date, if your analysis comes from a chart like bigger than 1 hour chart, and try to use, of course, shorter expiration date. If the analysis comes from lower time frames. I would go all the time in these ranges, and in the Asian session with the ranges I will go with hourly expirations if it is on the 5-minute chart, or with half an hour expiration if it is on the 1-minute chart. But then on the London session I would go with bigger expiration date. Bigger expiration date means something like end of day, and even end of week, depending 4-hour chart or not. Thank you very much for being here. FairBinaryOptions.com. We just look at the basics of EURGBP and pound, and what to consider when deciding to take a binary option or to trade an option with this cross. Thank you, and bye bye.